Are you a manufacturer or supplier struggling to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of regulatory compliance? ComplyDoC is here to revolutionize the way you ensure product compliance. With regulations like the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, Conflict Minerals, PFAS, REACH, SCIP database, RoHS exemptions, persistent organic pollutant, California Prohibition, and many others, it can be overwhelming to navigate the complex web of rules and regulations. But with ComplyDoC, you don't have to do it alone. Our AI-powered platform streamlines the entire compliance process, automating the verification of product conformity with the latest regulations and standards. By using ComplyDoC, you can access a centralized database of regulatory requirements updated in real time, automatically verify product compliance with AI-powered insights, and enjoy a cost-effective solution compared to traditional service providers. ComplyDoC also helps establish trust and transparency between buyers and suppliers, and you'll receive alerts for any regulatory changes that affect your products. The best part is, the entire process is quick and easy. Simply upload your components and materials, enter your company information, and start adding your articles. Answer a series of questions related to regulations like RoHS, REACH, SCIP database, Supply Chain Due Diligence Act and more. When you're finished, sign your declaration using your finger or mouse, and your declaration of conformity will be generated. ComplyDoC software and database can cover the following modules. 1. RoHS Directive 2011/65/EU and Delegated Directive, EU, 2015/863. 2. Substances of Very High Concern, SVHC, of the REACH Regulation, EC, No. 1907/2006. 3. Substances restricted under Annex XVII of the REACH Regulation, EC, No. 1907/2006. 4. SCIP database established under the EU Waste Framework Directive 2008/98/EC, WFD. 5. Persistent Organic Pollutants, POP, Regulation, EU, 2019/1021. 6. Minamata Convention on Mercury. 7. Sweden's Chemical Tax Act, 2016:1067, ECTA. 8. Chemicals Prohibition Ordinance, ChemVerbotsV. 9. Devices Regulation, EU, 2017/745, MDR. 10. Substances classified under the Battery Regulation. 11. Substances restricted under the Packaging Directive. 12. Biocidal Products Regulation, BPR, Regulation, EU, 528/2012. 13. Cosmetics Regulation, EC, No. 1223/2009. 14. Toxic Substances Control Act of 1976, TSCA, Sector 6, H. 15. Toxic Substances Control Act of 1976, TSCA, Sector 5, A, 2. 16. California Prohibition 65. 17. PFAS in Maine in USA. 18. EN 45558:2019, the European Union's Ecodesign Directive, Directive 2009/125/EC. 19. EN 45559:2019, the European Union's Ecodesign Directive, Directive 2009/125/EC. 20. Supply Chain Act, Lieferkettengesetz. 21. Conflict Minerals Regulation. 22. Recycled Content. 23. Carbon Footprint. Let us see how does it work. Click on Start and upload your components and materials. Then, enter your company information, including the name and address. Next, upload the delegation document, a document that proves you are authorized to represent your company. Begin by adding your article and selecting whether you are entering a material or a component. Choose your article identifier and upload an image of your article. You start with a supplier questionnaire to assess the supplier risk based on his quality certificates and artificial intelligence assessment based on all information that have been entered and will be entered. Then, answer questions about the article, such as whether it is an electrical or electronic product under the RoHS Directive. The RoHS, Restriction of Hazardous Substances, Directive is a European Union (EU) regulation that restricts the use of certain hazardous substances in electrical and electronic equipment (EEE). The directive was adopted in February 2003 and came into effect on July 1, 2006. The RoHS Directive aims to protect human health and the environment by reducing the amount of hazardous substances used in the production of EEE. The RoHS Directive applies to most EEE, including household appliances, IT and telecommunications equipment, lighting equipment, electrical tools, toys, and medical devices. There are some exemptions for specific types of equipment or components that are essential for the functioning of certain products. To comply with the RoHS Directive, manufacturers, importers, and distributors of EEE must ensure that their products do not contain any of the restricted substances above the maximum concentration values specified in the directive. The compliance of products with the RoHS Directive is usually indicated by a CE marking. If the answer is yes, then you must answer other RoHS Directive-related questions like category number. Answer if the article can be exempted from RoHS by category type, and if not, check if the article can be exempted from RoHS based on Annex III or Annex IV. If no exemptions are possible, then you have to confirm that this article is meeting requirements of the RoHS Directive. A test report can be also uploaded to support your answer and to get more points in your classification as low or high risk supplier. The more test reports you upload, the better your rank will be as a trustworthy supplier. Now, you answer REACH questions. And you start with REACH substances of very high concern. If the article does contain substances of very high concern. REACH, registration, evaluation, authorization and restriction of chemicals, is a regulation of the European Union that aims to ensure a high level of protection for human health and the environment from the risks that can be posed by chemicals. Substances of very high concern, SVHCs, are a group of chemicals that have been identified as being of particular concern due to their potential to cause serious health or environmental problems. SVHCs are identified based on their hazardous properties, such as being carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction, or having persistent, bioaccumulative, and toxic, PBT, or very persistent and very bioaccumulative, VPVB, properties. Once a substance is identified as an SVHC, it is added to the candidate list for authorization, which currently contains over 200 substances. If you are using SVHC, then you must answer SCIP database questions. The SCIP database is a European Union (EU) database that was established to support the implementation of the Waste Framework Directive (WFD) with respect to the safe management of hazardous waste. SCIP stands for Substances of Concern in Articles as Such or in Complex Products. The database requires companies to provide information on the presence of substances of very high concern, SVHCs, in their products, including articles and complex products that are intended to be placed on the EU market. This includes products such as electronics, furniture, textiles, and toys, among others. The aim of the SCIP database is to improve the transparency of information on hazardous substances in products and to support the circular economy by facilitating the safe and sustainable management of waste containing these substances. The database is intended to be used by waste operators, consumers, and other stakeholders to make informed decisions about the safe and sustainable management of waste. Companies are required to submit information on the presence of SVHCs in their products to the SCIP database starting January 5, 2021. The information submitted to the database includes details about the product, such as its name, description, and intended use, as well as information about the SVHCs present in the product, including their name, concentration, and location. You have to provide the HS code, production area in the EU or outside the EU or both, safety instructions, material category or mixture category. Sometimes, you can provide additional categories as well if needed. After that, you answer questions about REACH Annex XVII. REACH Annex XVII is a list of substances that are restricted from being placed on the market or used in the European Union, EU, in certain concentrations or applications. The annex is part of the REACH regulation, which stands for Registration, Evaluation, Authorization and Restriction of Chemicals. The purpose of Annex XVII is to protect human health and the environment by restricting the use of certain hazardous substances. The Annex contains restrictions on a wide range of substances, including carcinogenic, mutagenic, and reprotoxic (CM) substances, persistent, bioaccumulative and toxic (PBT) substances, and substances that have been identified as posing a risk to human health or the environment. The restrictions outlined in Annex XVII are legally binding and apply to all products that are placed on the market within the EU. Companies must ensure that their products comply with the restrictions outlined in the Annex before they can be placed on the market. For example, one restriction under Annex XVII is on the use of lead in certain products. Lead is restricted in the EU for use in certain products such as toys, jewelry, and paint due to its potential to cause harm to human health, particularly in children. Annex XVII is regularly updated to reflect new scientific and regulatory developments, and companies must keep up to date with any changes to ensure that their products comply with the latest restrictions. After that, you answer questions about persistent organic pollutant regulation. Persistent organic pollutants, POPs, are organic compounds that are resistant to environmental degradation and can persist in the environment for long periods of time. They can bioaccumulate in the food chain, and exposure to POPs has been linked to a range of health problems, including cancer, reproductive and developmental disorders, and immune system damage. The United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP, has developed a global treaty known as the Stockholm Convention on POPs to regulate and eliminate the production, use, and release of POPs into the environment. The convention entered into force in 2004 and has been ratified by over 180 countries. The Stockholm Convention currently regulates 28 POPs, including pesticides such as DDT and industrial chemicals such as polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs. The convention sets out requirements for the reduction and elimination of POPs, including a ban on the production and use of certain POPs, as well as restrictions on the production and use of others. The European Union, EU, has also adopted regulations to control and eliminate POPs. The EU POPs regulation, which came into force in 2004, implements the Stockholm Convention in the EU and prohibits the production, use, and trade of POPs. The regulation also includes measures to manage and dispose of POPs waste safely. In addition to the Stockholm Convention and the EU POPs regulation, there are other regional and national regulations around the world that aim to control and eliminate the production, use, and release of POPs. The aim of these regulations is to protect human health and the environment by reducing exposure to these harmful substances. Now, you answer the Minamata Convention on Mercury, which is a global treaty that aims to protect human health and the environment from the harmful effects of mercury. The convention was adopted in 2013 and entered into force in 2017. The convention includes provisions for reducing and eventually eliminating the use of mercury in a variety of products and processes, including in small-scale gold mining, dental amalgam, and certain types of electrical equipment. It also includes measures for the environmentally sound storage and disposal of mercury and mercury-containing waste. One of the key elements of the convention is the establishment of a global supply chain management system for mercury. This system aims to track the production, import, and export of mercury to prevent its illegal trade and use. The convention also includes provisions for supporting developing countries in implementing the treaty through capacity building, technology transfer, and financial assistance. As of 2021, the Minamata Convention has been ratified by 128 countries and the European Union. The convention is named after the Japanese city of Minamata, where a major mercury poisoning incident occurred in the mid-20th century. Then you answer Swedish chemical tax question about Sweden. Companies in Sweden that manufacture, receive or import duty-liable electronic goods for business purposes must pay excise duty on them. From October 1, 2020, you must also pay excise duty on duty-liable goods transported to Sweden from another EU country, even if they have not been purchased for the buyer's own business purposes. This is known as distance selling, and it applies when annual sales of duty-liable goods during the current or previous calendar year amount to more than 100,000 Swedish kronor. The same rules apply regardless of whether goods are transported to Sweden by the seller, or by someone else on behalf of the seller. 90% of the tax can be deducted on electronic goods if any added bromine, chlorine or phosphorus compounds make up a proportion less than 0.1% by weight of the homogeneous material in a circuit board, with the exception of the components of the board. A plastic part weighing more than 25 g. The same applies if any bromine or chlorine compound added as a reactant makes up a proportion less than 0.1% by weight of the homogeneous material in a circuit board, with the exception of the components of the board, or a plastic part weighing more than 25 g. The next questions is related to Germany and about formaldehyde under Chemicals Prohibition Ordinance, ChemVerbotsV. Coated and uncoated wood-based materials, particle board, block board, veneer board, and fiberboard, may not be placed on the market if the equilibrium concentration of formaldehyde caused by the wood-based material exceeds 0.1 ml per cbm, ppm, in the air of a test room. Furniture containing wood-based materials that do not comply with the requirements of paragraph 1 shall not be placed on the market. However, paragraph 1 shall also be deemed to be met if the furniture complies with the compensatory concentration referred to in paragraph 1, in a whole body test. Washing, cleaning and care products with a mass content of more than 0.2% formaldehyde may not be placed on the market. The Battery Directive, also known as Directive 2006/66/EC, is a European Union (EU) directive that sets out rules for the production, marketing, and disposal of batteries and accumulators. The directive includes restrictions on the use of certain substances in batteries and accumulators, including 1. Mercury. The Battery Directive restricts the use of mercury in all batteries and accumulators, with a few exceptions. Mercury is a toxic substance that can cause serious health and environmental problems. 2. Cadmium. The Battery Directive restricts the use of cadmium in portable batteries and accumulators, with a few exceptions. Cadmium is also a toxic substance that can cause serious health and environmental problems. The restrictions on mercury and cadmium in the Battery Directive aim to reduce the use of these toxic substances and to promote the use of alternative, less harmful materials in batteries and accumulators. The directive also requires manufacturers to label their batteries and accumulators to indicate the presence of these substances. And then you do the same for the Packaging Directive if your article is using packages. The Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, PPWD, is a European Union (EU) directive that sets out rules for the management of packaging waste and the use of certain hazardous substances in packaging materials. The PPWD restricts the use of several hazardous substances in packaging materials, including the combined concentration of lead, cadmium, mercury and hexavalent chromium under the Packaging Directive cannot exceed 100 ppm. If the article will be used in medical devices, then you must answer this question, which is always recommended because many components will be used in medical devices and answering this question will increase your market size. Section 10.4.1 of the EU Medical Device Regulation, EU MDR, mandates that manufacturers must identify any substances in invasive materials, or those that come into contact with fluids or gases, that are carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction, CMRs, or that disrupt the endocrine system and #40, EDCs and #41, if they are present at concentrations over 0.1% W/W. After answering the medical device regulation question, you go to answer question related to biocidal products regulation if biocides have been used in this article. The Biocidal Products Regulation, BPR, is a European Union (EU) regulation that sets out rules for the production, marketing, and use of biocidal products. Biocidal products are substances or mixtures that are intended to kill, control, or prevent the growth of harmful organisms, such as pests, bacteria, and viruses. The BPR aims to ensure a high level of protection for human health and the environment from the risks associated with the use of biocidal products. The regulation requires manufacturers to obtain authorization for the use of biocidal products and to provide information on the safety and effectiveness of the products. The authorization process involves an evaluation of the risks and benefits associated with the use of the biocidal product, including its impact on human health and the environment. The evaluation takes into account factors such as the intended use of the product, the target organism, and the potential for exposure to the product. The BPR also includes restrictions on the use of certain hazardous substances in biocidal products, such as substances that are carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction. The regulation requires manufacturers to provide information on the composition of their biocidal products, including any hazardous substances present, and to label their products accordingly. The BPR applies to biocidal products that are produced or imported into the EU, and it covers a wide range of products, including disinfectants, insecticides, rodenticides, and preservatives. The aim of the regulation is to ensure that biocidal products are safe and effective, and that their use does not pose a risk to human health or the environment. If you are using biocides inside your products, then you must answer the Biocidal Products Regulation. The questions you will answer will be different if your article does have a primary biocidal function or secondary biocidal function. In this example, we choose articles with secondary biocidal function, or what is called treated articles. EU regulation that sets out rules for the production, marketing, and labeling of cosmetic products. The regulation applies to all cosmetic products that are placed on the EU market, regardless of whether they are manufactured within the EU or imported from outside the EU. The cosmetic regulation aims to ensure a high level of protection for human health and the environment from the risks associated with the use of cosmetic products. The regulation requires manufacturers to ensure that their products are safe for human use, and that they do not contain certain hazardous substances. Under the cosmetic regulation, manufacturers must ensure that their cosmetic products are labeled with a list of ingredients, in descending order of weight, and that the labeling is clear and legible. The regulation also requires manufacturers to provide information on the function and use of the product, as well as any special precautions that should be taken when using the product. In addition to the labeling requirements, the cosmetic regulation also sets out rules for the testing and evaluation of cosmetic products. The regulation prohibits animal testing for cosmetic purposes within the EU, and it requires manufacturers to use alternative methods of testing, such as in vitro tests or computer simulations, wherever possible. The cosmetic regulation covers a wide range of cosmetic products, including creams, lotions, shampoos, deodorants, and perfumes, among others. The aim of the regulation is to ensure that cosmetic products are safe and effective, and that their use does not pose a risk to human health or the environment. If this article will be sold in the USA, then you must answer questions related to the Toxic Substances Control Act (TSCA) and the persistent, bioaccumulative, and toxic chemicals under TSCA Section 6H. And also questions related to TSCA Section 5(a)(2). TSCA Section 5(a)(2) does not collect a special list of substances. Instead, it establishes a requirement for manufacturers, processors, or importers to submit a Significant New Use Notice (SNUN) to the EPA before they begin manufacturing, importing, or processing a chemical substance for a significant new use. A significant new use is defined as a use that the EPA determines could result in increased human or environmental exposure to the chemical substance or could present new or changed risks. The EPA may designate a Significant New Use Rule, SNUR, for a specific chemical substance based on factors such as the substance's projected volume, its use in consumer products, and potential for environmental release or human exposure. When the EPA promulgates a SNUR for a specific chemical substance, it is added to the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, which maintains a list of substances with significant new uses subject to TSCA Section 5(a)(2) requirements. This below list is not considered a special list of substances collected under TSCA Section 5(a)(2), but rather a record of substances that have been identified as requiring additional review and oversight before being used for significant new purposes. It is important to note that the list of substances with significant new uses is subject to change as the EPA continues to evaluate new and existing chemicals and their potential risks. To stay updated on substances subject to SNURs, one can consult the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, or the EPA's website, which maintains a searchable database of TSCI-regulated substances. If you sell in California, then you have to answer questions related to California Proposition 65. California Proposition 65, also known as the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act of 1986, is a California law that requires businesses to provide warnings to consumers about exposure to chemicals that are known to cause cancer, birth defects, or other reproductive harm. Under Proposition 65, the state of California maintains a list of chemicals that are known to cause cancer, birth defects, or other reproductive harm. The list currently includes more than 900 chemicals, including lead, arsenic, and phthalates, among others. Businesses that operate in California must provide clear and reasonable warnings to consumers if their products contain any of the chemicals on the Proposition 65 list. The warnings must be provided in a manner that is reasonably calculated to reach the intended audience, such as on product labels, in catalogs, or on websites. Proposition 65 also prohibits businesses from knowingly discharging listed chemicals into sources of drinking water, and it requires businesses to notify individuals and government agencies if they are aware of such discharges. The aim of Proposition 65 is to inform and protect California residents from exposure to chemicals that are known to cause cancer, birth defects, or other reproductive harm. The law has been effective in reducing exposure to these chemicals, and it has encouraged businesses to find safer alternatives to the chemicals on the Proposition 65 list. In July 2021, Public Law C-477, an Act to Stop Perfluoroalkyl and Polyfluoroalkyl Substances Pollution, LD 1503, 130th Legislature, was enacted by the Maine Legislature. Any product sold, offered for sale, or distributed for sale in Maine which contains intentionally added PFAS must be reported to the Department. 38 MRS Section 1614, 1g, defines a product as an item manufactured, assembled, packaged or otherwise prepared for sale to consumers, including its product components, sold or distributed for personal, residential, commercial or industrial use, including for use in making other products. The statute defines product component as an identifiable component of a product, regardless of whether the manufacturer of the product is the manufacturer of the component. All products and product components sold in Maine for personal, residential, commercial, or industrial use are subject to this program. If a product is offered for sale in Maine for one of those purposes, the manufacturer of the product must report the amount of PFAS in their product. The packaging of a product is not required to be reported. The manufacturer of a product sold, offered for sale, or distributed for sale in the state of Maine that contains intentionally added PFAS is required to report to the Department. Under the statute, PFAS are broadly defined as substances that include any member of the class of fluorinated organic chemicals containing at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. The Department interprets fully fluorinated to mean a carbon atom on which all the hydrogen substituents have been replaced by fluorine. Any intentionally added chemical meeting this definition will trigger the notification requirement. Individual PFAS must be identified by their Chemical Abstract Service Registry number. Therefore, you must answer if you are aware of any PUR and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFASs, that are used in this article. If yes, please mention the name of the substance and CAS number if applicable. The U.S. EPA maintains a web page of chemicals considered PFAS which, while not exhaustive, provides some clarity on what compounds are considered within the definition of PFAS. Conflict minerals regulation refers to regulations aimed at addressing the trade of minerals that finance armed conflict in certain regions of the world. The term, conflict minerals, generally refers to minerals such as tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold that are mined in conflict-affected or high-risk areas, often in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and surrounding countries. Conflict minerals are often sold to finance armed groups in the region, perpetuating violence and human rights abuses. The conflict minerals regulation is intended to reduce this trade and promote responsible sourcing of these minerals. The next questions is about conflict minerals. In 2010, the United States passed the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, which included a provision known as the Conflict Minerals Rule. This rule requires companies that file reports with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to disclose whether their products contain conflict minerals, and if so, to report on their due diligence measures to identify and address the risks of sourcing these minerals from conflict-affected regions. The European Union also introduced a regulation in 2017 on the responsible sourcing of minerals, which aims to ensure that importers of tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold comply with supply chain due diligence obligations, including risk management and third-party audits. The conflict minerals regulation has had a significant impact on the mining and minerals industry, leading to increased transparency and responsible sourcing practices. It has also helped to reduce the financing of armed groups and promote stability and human rights in conflict-affected regions. The German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, also known as Lieferkettengesetz, requires companies to ensure that human rights and environmental standards are respected throughout their supply chains. The following are the 5 steps of the Act. 1. Risk analysis. Companies are required to identify and assess potential risks to human rights and the environment throughout their supply chains. 2. Preventive measures. Based on the risk analysis, companies are required to take appropriate preventive measures to avoid or mitigate adverse impacts. 3. Remediation. If adverse impacts occur, companies are required to take appropriate remedial measures to address them. 4. Reporting. Companies are required to publish an annual report on their compliance with the due diligence obligations and provide information on their risk analysis, preventive and remedial measures, and other relevant information. 5. Monitoring. The government is responsible for monitoring compliance with the Act and can impose fines or penalties on companies that fail to comply with their obligations. 6. Starting from January 1, 2023, the LKSG applies to companies with a minimum of 3,000 employees, whose head office, administrative seat, or statutory seat is in Germany, or who have a branch in Germany with at least 3,000 employees. From January 1, 2024, the Act will also extend to companies with at least 1,000 employees whose head office, administrative seat, or statutory seat is in Germany, or who have a branch in Germany with at least 1,000 employees. 7. It's important to note that the number of employees for group companies is calculated based on the parent company. Temporary workers are only included if their assignment exceeds 6 months. Although companies with fewer employees are not directly covered by the Supply Chain Act, they may still be impacted indirectly. Directly affected companies will need to ensure human rights compliance in their supply chain and may need to implement measures such as a code of conduct for suppliers. These measures may have a direct impact on their suppliers, and the companies may need to secure the active support of their suppliers through reporting obligations as part of their risk analysis. The German Supply Chain Act is part of a broader trend of legislation focusing on corporate responsibility and sustainable supply chain management, including similar laws in other European countries like France and the Netherlands. In order to allow risk analysis and implementation of a risk management system to identify, prevent, and mitigate potential human rights and environmental risks in their supply chain, you must answer the following questions. This question is optional and it is about sustainability and eco-design requirements. By answering this question about critical raw materials, you allow the best use of recycled materials and increase resource efficiency and decrease environmental impact of your products because now manufacturer will be aware in which part they can find the critical raw material and reuse them. You will contribute to a better Earth by answering this question. Then you answer questions about recyclability of the article. Recyclability information is important for several reasons. Environmental impact. Recycling helps to reduce the amount of waste that ends up in landfills and incinerators, and conserves natural resources by using recycled materials instead of raw materials. By providing recyclability information, consumers and businesses can make informed decisions about their purchases and disposal practices, and help reduce their environmental impact. Product design. Recyclability information can help manufacturers design products that are more easily recyclable. This can help to increase the amount of waste that is diverted from landfills, and reduce the cost and energy required for recycling. Circular economy. The circular economy is a system in which resources are kept in use for as long as possible, with waste and pollution minimized. By providing recyclability information, businesses can contribute to the development of a circular economy by designing products that are easier to recycle and by promoting recycling and reuse practices. Economic benefits. Recycling can create jobs and stimulate economic growth in the recycling and waste management industries. By providing recyclability information, businesses can contribute to the growth of these industries and create economic opportunities. Now, it is about collecting carbon footprint information, which is important for several reasons. Climate change mitigation. Carbon footprint information provides an understanding of the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are being produced by a particular individual, organization, or activity. By identifying the sources of emissions, strategies can be developed to reduce or mitigate the emissions. This is essential for reducing the impact of climate change on our planet. Corporate social responsibility. Organizations have a responsibility to act in a socially responsible manner. Collecting carbon footprint information is one way in which companies can demonstrate their commitment to sustainability and environmental stewardship. By being transparent about their emissions, they can show that they are taking steps to reduce their environmental impact. Consumer awareness. Consumers are becoming increasingly aware of the impact their actions have on the environment. By providing carbon footprint information, companies can help consumers make informed choices about the products and services they use. This can lead to increased demand for environmentally friendly products and services. Government regulations. Governments around the world are implementing regulations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Collecting carbon footprint information can help companies comply with these regulations and avoid potential penalties. When you are done, you sign your declaration by your finger or using mouse, and then your declaration of conformity will be generated. This is the report that will be generated as a declaration of conformity with all required information and the risk assessment and meeting ISO/IEC 17050. Advantages of ComplyDoC. All forms are prepared in digital format and stored in cloud. Access from everywhere. Secured with specific password for each user. Customized solutions. SQL database. Can be installed on-site, if requested. Automatic submission of SCIP service. In addition, we educate your suppliers to engage them in your sustainability and product compliance process. With ComplyDoC, businesses can save valuable time and resources, reduce the risk of non-compliant products, and build stronger relationships with their partners. The importance of regulatory compliance cannot be overstated. Don't let outdated and manual processes hold you back. Let ComplyDoC revolutionize the way you ensure product compliance. If you want to learn more, please drop us an email at info@complymarket.com.